Thank you so much, David. Okay, let me get my screen shared and we'll go ahead and get started. That was a lovely introduction. So thank you all for being here today. Before I talk about myself, I want to talk a little bit about who is in the room today. And we have a smattering of people kind of across the different demographics that we provided. See some fellow parents in the room, also have some educators, and then districts and school leaders and ed tech developers. And those are pretty evenly distributed, and researchers exploring parent-led learning or ed tech tools. So thrilled to have you all here with me today. We're also going to have another poll question here in a moment while I do my intro, asking you all about your familiarity with these different tools and things like that. So like David shared, this session it's the last session actually of the AI and literacy workshop series that the Learning Agency is running in partnership with Innovate US and the Burns Center for Social Change. So this series is designed to explore how AI can advance K-12 literacy in a variety of different ways. Before we dive into the content, I wanted to share a little bit more about myself and discuss our goals for today. So like I said at the top of the call, I work at the Learning Agency, and the Learning Agency is an innovation organization supporting tech-powered advancements at all levels of education, and I work as a program director. In my work, I support a variety of efforts, including scoping new projects at the cutting edge of technology and supporting field building efforts to make sure the voices of educators and other stakeholders are in conversation with our efforts. Professionally, I worked directly with students for nearly a decade before coming to the Learning Agency. I started in a small rural community in Costa Rica as my first job right out of college. I eventually became a 5th to 12th grade Spanish teacher, so really wide range of ages. And then I went and taught college students for several years during my PhD. And in and among that, I also periodically worked for the North Carolina Migrant Education Program, which supported students and their families who came to the area to work in agriculture. And I did that for about 3 years. Personally, I'm a parent. I have a 4-year-old and an almost 6-year-old, both of whom are just starting their literacy journeys. So I also did a little product testing with my almost 6-year-old to get his take on the tools that I'll be demoing today. So I have some actual student insights to share as well. I bring all of these areas to our conversation, and I'll get to share a bit about these different platforms, my kids' experiences, and then how they also connect to our work at the Learning Agency in general. Today's workshop will focus on exploring how AI-driven tools can create opportunities for more reading practice at home while empowering parents and caregivers to engage in their children's literacy learning journeys and support their education outside of the classroom. As a quick caveat, the tools we'll be talking about today are designed for use at home, often with features that allow parents to follow along and track their child's progress. That said, if I know we have parents in the room, how you use screens can differ so much from family to family. And some families may be opting for more hands-on engagement with these platforms with their children, while others are using this as kind of independent practice. As a parent, I think that screen time can be a valuable tool in families for a variety of different reasons. My kid is home with strep throat today. So some screen time came into the picture so that we could all live our best lives. And some of these platforms are just different ways to use that screen time and feel like you're getting a little bit more out of it than what he wanted to do, which was watch My Little Pony for 4 hours. So just putting that kind of in the panorama of realistic expectations for what they can do within a home in addition to this literacy practice. And of course, research does tell us that when digital features are combined with adult scaffolding, there's significant benefit for language and literacy development. This is especially true for children in that 3 to 8-year-old range, which is the age range many of the tools we'll discuss today are designed for. And I'll also invite each of you to keep introducing yourself in the chat and start dropping in your questions that you'd like to see discussed towards the end of the call. We'll have some Q&A then. And then I also want to review the answers from the second poll that we had about how familiar this group is with ed tech tools for at-home literacy support. We only have a couple of people who would rank themselves as very familiar, and most of our group is in that middle range of somewhat to not very. So I think we have a real range, and I look forward to seeing how that's reflected in our Q&A as well. So there's a ton of research on the importance of parental involvement in children's literacy development. It's been found to be the #1 predictor of early literacy success and future academic achievement. One 2019 study found that young children whose parents read to them daily will hear at least 290,000 more words by the time they start kindergarten than children who are not read to regularly. It's been posited that this greater exposure to vocabulary gives children a huge advantage when they begin practicing reading in school. Research has also shown that when families read with their children, this helps improve language development through exposure to vocabulary. Specifically, studies have found positive effects on reading achievement, language comprehension, and expressive language skills. The value of parental involvement is also evident across subjects, not just literacy, right? One study focused on 7-year-olds found a statistically significant association between parental involvement and a child's academic performance. In addition to boosting early literacy and language skills, when families read with and engage with their children around literacy, it also helps with building empathy and supporting social emotional development, cultivating a general interest in reading, which is super important to keep that motivation up as children age, strengthening family bonds by encouraging conversation and connection, and exploring new information and subjects. Many of these tools have read aloud components and non-read aloud components. So they don't replace parent-led literacy activities like reading your kids their books at bedtime, but can be a supplement to them or just a different way to engage. With that, I'll give a brief high-level overview of how tools for at-home literacy engagement have evolved over time. Prior to 2010, before the development of AI, there's a significant amount of research on the value of parents becoming more greatly involved in their students' literacy development. In 1985, a seminal report on reading was published by the Department of Education's Institute of Education Sciences. The report notes the importance of parental involvement in language development. In particular, it says, quote, "The single most important activity for building the knowledge required for eventual success in reading is reading aloud to children." And so I think we can kind of extrapolate these tools that from this paper that parents being involved and invested in their child's literacy and reading journey is incredibly important. And there's a variety of different ways that we can have that investment and engagement. And like I said earlier, the platforms we're reviewing today don't replace reading to your kids. Instead, they're a tech-based amplifier that gives you another way to stay engaged in your child's literacy development. And if you haven't noticed, it's a good thing to keep yourself muted while you're here in the Zoom room too, so that background noise doesn't slip in. Between 2010 and 2015, we see digital platforms like ABC Mouse become more popular, offering interactive reading activities that kids could practice at home through its website and via a mobile app as well. Other examples we can see around this time include PBS Kids, who launched a reading platform with games and interactive stories. Hooked on Phonics, which I remember seeing infomercials about when I was a kid, launched its first app. These tools support at-home reading engagement, but don't use AI yet, and are rather limited in their ability to provide personalized experiences or feedback. Rather, they rely on some basic interactive elements and pre-designed paths with that. Around this time, though, some parental dashboards are introduced, but these focus on usage versus skills. So for example, ABC Mouse offered usage reports for parents to track how much time their kid was spending on the games, but they're not necessarily telling you the skills that those kids are getting out of those games. As an example of research on parental engagement that continued through these years, particularly through digital platforms, in 2013 to 2014, there was a randomized control trial to study the impact of the organization Parent Powered and their family engagement programs. The program gave tips to parents via text to promote literacy development. The study found that parents engaged in more home literacy activities, which were prompted by these texts, were more involved in school. And this program had also been found to have positive impacts on student learning. In 2017 and on, though, is when we see AI features really getting introduced and integrated into these platforms and new tools are launched. In 2019, Google's Read Aloud app launched, and the app features an in-app reading assistant for kids called Daya, which uses advanced text-to-speech and voice recognition technologies to listen to children read and provide feedback and encouragement. During the pandemic in particular, there's a huge increase in EdTech tools in general to support remote learning. As these tools have advanced, they've become more personalized and able to provide more precise guidance to both children and their caregivers. For example, the organization Springboard Collaborative is now working on a parent-facing literacy screener, which will use AI to assess children's literacy progress at home. With that, we see a variety of key players in this space. The majority of tools for at-home reading support use speech recognition technology to capture children's speech as they read aloud. In some cases, these tools are able to provide real-time feedback on things like pronunciation, fluency, and even comprehension. In other cases, AI is used to assess these foundational skills and provide parents with detailed reports. Some of these tools also use AI to create adaptive and personalized learning paths. Tools like BookBot and Homer tailor content based on a child's level, progress, and interest, which is great. The majority of these tools also use gamification, so making it fun for kids like a game to create an interactive and engaging experience for readers that motivates them and encourages them to practice reading skills. This includes the use of conversational avatars or bots in the case of BookBot, which I'll be demoing later in this workshop to help coach readers, the use of rewards like getting badges and points, levels, celebratory features, and other visually engaging elements like progress bars and elements that help signal that the student is just moving forward. Many of these allow for customization as well, like being able to select an avatar or pick your own bot and BookBot, which you'll see down the line, to help create a more fun and personalized experience. So what skills are these tools targeting? These tools are driven by reading science, which I know is a big topic right now, designed to build foundational literacy skills. This includes things like phonemic awareness, so the ability to hear, identify, and manipulate individual sounds, decoding, the ability to sound out and recognize words, and these core skills ultimately support children's accuracy, fluency, and comprehension. Some major players in this space include Duolingo, which many of you may have learned to use to learn a new language, also has an ABC section. It's a free app designed to teach young children literacy through interactive game-based lessons. This is similar to the traditional Duolingo app people use for language learning. It uses speech recognition and an AI voice generator to guide children through its games. I mentioned Google Read Aloud, which also uses AI to help students and children practice reading and provides real-time feedback on pronunciation and fluency. Early Bird Education has a sister entity that's launched called Sprout Labs, which focuses on at-home literacy support. And they have a tool called Pip School, which uses advanced AI to listen to children reading and responding and assesses them to help them continue practicing their literacy skills. Amira Learning has a suite of literacy supports tools for schools and districts, and it also has a parent-facing platform called Amira at Home. However, you can't access the platform unless your school is also using Amira. So if a student isn't using Amira Learning in school, it's not available for independent family use. And then Homer is an early learning app for children that focuses on a number of skills, including reading. As these tools and others are emerging in the field, there are several big research questions that are shaping product development. Co-designing with families. One critical question is how to ensure that tools are being co-designed with families and kids, right? Because if it's not being made with them, we can end up with this product that might have a really good concept, but just isn't engaging enough to keep those kids or their parents involved. This is important so that these tools are created with unique needs in mind from these groups, and it's also a way to ensure that tools are created to empower families and keep them actively involved. I've talked about automatic speech recognition and a few of these different providers. The accuracy and reliability of automatic speech recognition is a huge thing to consider. Automatic speech recognition, you've all used it when you've used like Siri on your phones or talk to an Alexa. But children's speech is just unique and different from adult speech. While ASR systems designed for adult speech have reached very impressive levels of accuracy, there's still an opportunity to improve systems for children, and particularly those with speech delays, multilingual learners, or those from diverse backgrounds who might not have super clear speech that these platforms are expecting in order to use ASR. Data privacy and ethics. Many families are naturally concerned about data security in these tools. Continuing to address these issues transparently is essential so that more parents are likely to use these tools with their children. This is particularly important for tools that are registering student voices and then using that data to guide future improvement. The frequency of screens and AI use, it's something that I know parents and my friends and I talk about a lot with our kids, is how much screen time we should be giving, how much is too much. As these tools advance and are increasingly integrated into home learning environments, we have to consider and continue researching the optimal amount of digital exposure for children, especially when digital platforms are also being used in schools. More research needs to be done in collaboration with families and pediatricians and other experts to ensure that tools are developmentally appropriate and to make sure we're striking a balance between tech-enabled learning and other activities, because these things, tech is not going to replace the role of parents doing things directly with their kids. Personalization and engagement. Another key question is how to deepen the personalization these tools provide, ensuring that content adapts not only to reading level and pace, but also to a kid's interest to help keep them engaged. As my colleague Perpetual mentioned in a past workshop, since many of these tools rely on gamified elements, there's also a delicate balance between engagement and learning. For a tool to be most impactful, it needs to be engaging and motivating, but it's also possible to have an engaging tool that actually doesn't provide much learning for the student. We want to make sure that as tools advance, they are still designed around learning science and are focused on driving learning gains. Accessibility is another huge element. To make these tools more widely accessible, it's important to continue addressing barriers like limited tech access, digital literacy, and cost. Some of these platforms can be very expensive, and that can be another element that keeps some families out from using them. And there's also platforms like Common Sense provide reviews for families to consider and around questions like engagement, privacy, and learning impact. At the Learning Agency, we bring a particular focus and approach to this area, but also to tech innovation in general. We publish research, interviews, and other articles exploring innovations for literacy education, including information on technological advancements such as automatic speech recognition, and survey findings on educator perspectives and needs. We've partnered with Renaissance Philanthropy to lead the tools competition, which funds EdTech solutions. Several past winners include Springboard Collaborative, BookBot, and Barbershop Books, all of which are working to advance literacy solutions. We also continue to scope the field to surface and understand cutting-edge approaches, harnessing AI for literacy skill development and to inform future funding efforts. Okay, now that we have a sense of the landscape, I'd love to go into a bit more detail on some of the tools I mentioned so you all can get a sense of how families can actually leverage these at home. We're going to start with BookBot. I've chosen BookBot as a first tool because they're a tools competition winner, which is the program the Learning Agency manages, so we're very familiar with them. And since this tool features a dedicated app specifically targeted at children and a separate app for parents to access their learners' data, this tool can give us a good sense of the distinction between learner and caregiver-facing features because it really has both. As a quick note, this tool is generally designed for children 5 to 9, so students on the very early end of the literacy journey might not be right for them. Although this tool does provide a free trial for 7 days, for long-term use, it does require a subscription of $99 a year, which I understand is not free and can sound like a lot of money, but it is much cheaper than a lot of the other tools that I've talked about. Sprout Labs charges $199 a month for access. So on the continuum, it's not on the far end of being super expensive. BookBot leverages AI through its applied speech recognition technologies and AI-powered personalized tutoring bot, which interacts with the users while they use the app. The app also provides personalized learning paths based on each user's specific challenges. BookBot also provides a gamified experience, about which we'll go into more detail in just a moment. And its scope and sequence is carefully structured so that each unit and story target specific reading skills. To start, I'll go over what the setup process looks like in the app. This is a mobile app, so you get it on your phone or a tablet. So once the app is downloaded, the parent is prompted to set up a reader profile. This is helpful so that if you have multiple kids who could all be using this app, you can separate their accounts. If you would like to enter your child's first name and the child can customize your avatar, you can. This is just a playful character that will guide the child through their different practice reading activities. And while you're selecting this, the app is talking to you. So the child can do this with you and hear the app. You don't have to read everything out loud to them. Then you select your child's reading level and purpose for using the app. To indicate a reading level, you would select which level of sentence complexity best aligns with the child's proficiency, and you can change this. So you can start easier and make it harder, or if you pick one that's too hard and you need to scale back, you can. For goals here, there's a variety of different things, and you'll notice some accessibility ones as well. Like Isaac has a vision impairment. Isaac has other reasons why they find reading difficult. This first one, and blue is what I selected for my kid when we were using it, which is Isaac is reading at a level for their age and wants to practice reading. Another neat tool in terms of settings is that a parent can change BookBot's voice depending on your family's English background. It is only in English at this point, but you can specify American, British, and Australian English, depending on which is a better fit for your family. In the future, though, for apps like these, there might be ways to work on making content more culturally relevant for more diverse student groups. Once the account is set up, the child will be able to access a library of decodable books, and it looks like this. So you'll see that there are options for the child to look through categories of books as well, which is helpful for connecting reading with themes across other subjects or interests. They had some unofficial Minecraft books, for example. One of those things where if that's something your kid is interested in, it might be a little bit more motivating for them to see. One thing to note, though, is that the level of support needed from a parent will vary depending on the learner's age and reading level. Some kids might be able to really take this and run with it pretty independently. Others might need more guidance. For my child, who's almost 6, he needed some more guidance. This wasn't something that he could really do by himself. He didn't really, it was hard for him to understand which reading level of book he should select. I picked the lowest level, but he picked a level 2 book, which was like way over his head. So he needed a little help to find the parts of this that were most relevant for him. Okay, and so now I'm going to show you a quick video so you'll kind of see what it looks like as a child is moving through this app and actual user experience. You won't be able to hear the actual sounds, just know the bot has like a cute little voice that narrates to you, but I'll talk over kind of what the video is showing. Okay, so this starts out with the user scrolling through a library and then they select a book. In this case, they're picking a book called Fill It Up. On the bottom right of the screen, you'll see this little bot is talking and interacting with the user. The character helps make the experience more interactive. As the user is making selection, the character narrates different steps. So saying that you need to say the name of the book and then practice saying the words. It gives you positive feedback. So it's like splendid and wonderful. First rate was another phrase it kept saying, which my kid thought was funny. And then after the kid reads the practice words, they start reading the book. As the child reads, the app recognizes their voice and helps them focus on the words they are reading. One thing to note is the app really allows kids to go at their own pace. So you'll see that arrow is popping up there, so it will help prompt them along a little bit to look at the different words, but it's not going to rush them or anything like that. Kids can really take their time if they need to. And then kids can scroll through the different pages on their own. So the app doesn't just move them through automatically, it waits for them to be ready. And then at the end of each book, the avatar pops back on the screen and makes, with a reflection question and a visual representation of progress the child is making in practicing different books. This visual will look different for different reading skill levels. The avatar will also ask the child to rate the book to keep track of their preferences. And here you can see another example of other gamified elements of the app. Once a reader completes a certain amount of books, they are congratulated for completing a level and receive a sticker. And as they read more books, they can win additional stickers and unlock new books. So there's little things like that to give them some motivation throughout. Before I go to the parent dashboard, which is in a separate app. So you get the BookBot app that your kid is using, but then you get the parent app, which I'll show you in a moment. But I want to talk about their scope and sequence. So each unit and story has been designed to target specific foundational reading skills. So you can see examples of target phonemes and skills on this page, which is the first page of their in-depth scope and sequence. And then you can also, if anyone's curious, this QR code on the presentation will go to the full document with their scope and sequence in case you're interested in digging in more. Now to look at the parent dashboard. Like I mentioned, there is a separate app. It's called BookBot Reports or BB Reports in the App Store that allows parents to get more insight into their child's usage and reading skills. In the first tab, a parent can see an overview of their child's engagement with the app. So this is number of books read, total reading time, and the reading levels completed through the app. You can also see stats on the reader's fluency and accuracy when reading, and graphic representations of their reading time and fluency. In the second tab, the parent can see a detailed reading log of each of the stories the child has read and how much time is spent on each one. Another nice feature is that BookBot Reports is also available to teachers. So a child's teacher can invite a family to connect in order to be able to monitor their progress. A teacher is also able to use this connection to assign books to children. And this is an incredibly valuable tool that helps to strengthen the relationship between teachers and families and to ensure that the skills students are practicing at school are carried over into the home and vice versa. If you have kids, you know, it can sometimes be school is kind of like a black box. Sometimes you just don't know what they're doing there. I will ask my kid what he did, and it turns out there's like some assembly and a musician came and he won't tell me that. So it can be hard sometimes to figure out from your kid what they're doing in the classroom, and this is just another way to amplify that communication. Okay, now I want to share another tool, which is Duolingo ABC, which I also talked about at the top of the presentation. One of the reasons why I picked this one is because it's completely free. So there are many of you who said you just weren't very familiar with using tools for at-home literacy support. If you want a low stakes, low barrier to entry option to test some of this out, Duolingo ABC is a great option. The app is also, this is also an app, so it's designed for use on a smartphone or tablet. And similar to BookBot, it relies on gamification to encourage literacy through a play-based approach. And it's targeted for learners 3 to 8. So it can be used by learners on the earlier end of that spectrum. What's different about Duolingo, though, is it's not a library like BookBot is. BookBot's really a library on your phone that helps guide you through word practice and things like that. Rather, the app is presented as a challenge or a quest in that type of format. This means that a user has to complete one activity or lesson before they can move on to the next one. And the lessons are scaffolded, so they build in complexity over time as the child progresses through activities. Each lesson is presented as a bite-sized activity that can be completed in 5 minutes or less to keep kids engaged and give them that positive feedback that they crave as they go through. Similar to BookBot, Duolingo ABC uses ASR and speech recognition. And it's not really clear if the app uses AI in other aspects of its adaptive content, but Duolingo has talked about using its machine learning model called BirdBrain for its language learning app to ensure content adapts in difficulty to a user skill level. Another unique element is that Duolingo ABC supports a broader set of literacy skills, including foundational reading and writing skills. Though obviously this is very different than a kid writing with a pencil. We'll show you a video in a little bit of a kid writing with the app. And it's using their finger. So it's not quite the same as writing with a different tool, but still gives them that practice. And then Duolingo ABC is driven by the science of reading and is aligned with Common Core standards. Their website offers a detailed guide breaking down its lessons based on grade level standards and skills, which we'll look at in just a moment as well. And then based on a study by Education Development Center, children who used the app for 9 weeks showed a 28% improvement in their literacy scores. And then just 2 months of use showed the same improvement expected from 2 months of kindergarten. So in terms of at-home scaffolding, a really solid option. So let's dive into what the app and its activities actually look like from the perspective of a child. Okay, to start, at the top of the screen, the child and parent are able to access an overview of each level. So here, for example, we'll see level 1 is targeted at pre-K to K learners and a breakdown of the letters and sight words this unit covers. This is one limitation to the app in some ways. You know, my child's kindergarten classroom has a very specific list of sight words, and you can't customize those here. So there might be some misalignment between the sight words that the app is able to offer and the sight word that a child would have in school. So again, it's a supplement to that classroom experience, not a replacement of it. Here you can see how the app creates this immersive experience. My kid thought this was super fun, and even with strep throat and the urgent care waiting room today, he was very excited to play the owl game, as he called it. And this game, it looks and feels like a non-educational game in a lot of ways. You have your character, you're getting points, you're getting coins, and that can be really appealing to kids. And the user feels like they're entering into this dedicated world. The interface makes the user feel like they're progressing on this map or like it's a board game, which can be very motivating. And then each level is associated with a specific building in the world of Duolingo ABC. In the photo on the right, you can see how most of the lessons are still locked. That's because the user needs to move its little owl step by step to get through the next lessons. And this also shows you just kind of the scaffolding that needs to take place. So you can't go to a more complex skill until you've done one before. And then we'll also take a look at this video. In this one, let's let it pull up. You'll see a writing activity in the app. So our little owl is going to go to it, and they're writing the lowercase m. And so the user is prompted to practice writing the letter themselves. The first few times, the user has assistance from the app, so it means the screen is less sensitive to the user's movements. With each round of practice, though, there's less and less assistance. In this final round, you'll see that the user has full control of the arrow's movements, which is this last one right here. There they go. And then while this is happening, the app is also making noises. So the little owl is like chirping and things like that. So there's also this auditory component. It does require you to write the letter in a very specific way, which is good in some ways. My kid found it a little frustrating at times because, like, for example, it didn't just want this shape. You had to make like the little tail that went with it too. And so he was like, how come it's not letting me finish? And it just took him a few times to figure it out. We can also see some of the other activities that a kid might be doing while they're in this app. And so there's a decent amount of variety between the different activities, which is a great way to keep the students kind of engaged and moving through and on their toes. Here, for example, there's a few different options. From going from left to right, the first screen shows us an example of a brief story being read out loud. And so the user isn't reading themselves, but they follow along with the highlighted words, and then those words come up in later activities. The second screenshot over here, I had this child rearrange the letters to make the word monkey. And then the third asks the user to drag the letter M to the photo of a monkey to associate the letter with the sound. So while the child is touching the letter, it goes, so they hear that letter as they are touching it. There's other ones where it'd say, make the word quit. And the student had to put in the digraph QU at the beginning, and every time you touched an option, it would make the sound that letter makes. So that way they were hearing it and they could put it up there at the same time. And then the fourth letter asks the user to pop the bubbles to select that letter that they're practicing. The app also offers users access to a library of stories that are read out loud to the users. And these stories are integrated directly into the gamified experience. So as users complete lessons, they intermittently find stories that they get to read. And the words that they were practicing in prior elements will come back up. For a look at Duolingo ABC's alignment with Common Core standards, we can also quickly reference this as an example of scope and sequence for table for level 1. And you can also access the full scope and sequence with the QR code that's on the screen. One note is that while the ad doesn't provide in-app progress updates to parents and skills analyses, it does send weekly reports home to parents via email. So when you make your kid's account, you will get a report back. So in these screenshots, you can see examples of a weekly report. As you'll see, these stats are more focused on usage, which is a different component compared to BookBot. Other things that I noticed when my kid was using the app, because the activities are so scaffolded, this is good in many ways, and you certainly don't want kids to be frustrated. If your child's a little bit more advanced for within their particular reading level, it can also feel a little boring because my kid knows how to write his letters. So practicing those over and over again wasn't super interesting to him. So that's just one thing to know. I will say my child liked Duolingo ABC from a game standpoint that kept him engaged more than he liked BookBot, but that's also because he is a younger learner. And so reading some of the books in BookBot were just a little over his head. I think if you have a kid who is really gaining those reading confidence skills, these are just totally different experiences in a lot of ways. If you have a kid who's gaining that reading confidence and would just benefit from some extra prompting and practice, BookBot is a great choice. If you really want to be able to see down to those phoneme level skills, Duolingo is good for that as well. Okay, awesome. Before I move to Q&A, I just want to talk about a few key takeaways. First, family involvement and continued literacy practice outside of the classroom matters. And there's a variety of ways that we can make that happen, from reading aloud to using these tools. The research tells us that when families are more involved, children see positive impacts on their literacy development. Today's tools make it easier for parents to support their children's literacy skills and have also become more knowledgeable at the same time and empowered with information about their child's level and progress. Today's AI-powered tools create gamified, personalized experiences that can make reading practice more fun and engaging for children. Equity and accuracy are important as these tools continue to develop. We always should be worrying about accessibility when it comes to tech and who gets access to these tools and who doesn't. Developers are also working to make sure these work well for users of different backgrounds and that key concerns around AI and ed tech use are being addressed. Okay, thanks everyone. And I'll let David help take us over to Q&A.
Thank you. That was fantastic. I was taking notes, listening. I love hearing your son's stories. It's fantastic. I know I have lots of questions. I'm sure others do as well. So if you let me open up the questions here. But let me start you off with one. I'm curious about you had mentioned Amira as sort of a key player. And do you find that that's maybe one of the ones that's most important or most versatile?
That's a good question. So Amira is a platform that is deployed in schools. It's a big provider in that way, and it's a well-known name. It's also known as having a pretty advanced AI capability, but in terms of a parent support tool, it has its limitations because you can only access that if your kid is using it at school. So if your kid is using it at school, awesome. Having something that dovetails with their curriculum and what they are doing in the classroom is fantastic. But if you are looking for something, for example, this summer, to have your kid do to prevent the summer slide and have them practicing those skills at home, Amira is not going to be one that you're going to be able to have easy access to. But it is one of the ones that people know as an innovator in the space.
Okay, gotcha. That's great. And I guess I was also sort of curious as I was listening to you about um, sort of co-designing the tools to ensure cultural relevance. And I was wondering if you could elaborate that or on those
Yeah,
experiences a bit.
yes, for sure. There's all these stories about standardized tests being made back in the day. A standardized test is given to children in Florida and it asks about clam chowder. And these kids have no idea what clam chowder is. And so they're set up to not be successful, but and they're no fault of their own. They're just words that those kids don't know. And having culturally relevant materials is so important in terms of motivation to being able to have a platform that's speaking the same language as you. You're set up for success and you understand it. One of the ones I noticed in BookBot in the story is there was a well, and the word that it used was the bore is dry,
Mm,
Bore. I didn't know what a book was. Probably a lot of kids don't, but for kids who do, it's like, oh, okay. There's another platform called Barbershop Books, and that's one of the things they pay attention to a lot. And their tool called Reading So Lit is the word. I didn't know this until Alvin shared it with me. A laundromat is called a washateria in Arkansas. So if you ask a kid about a laundromat who lives in Arkansas, they're not going to know what you're talking about. And you're going to start making it look like they don't know the answer when they do. They're just speaking a slightly different language than you. So that's one
mm,
side of things. The other one with ASR is ASR, so that's automatic speech recognition, has a lot of work to do still when it comes to recognizing diverse speech. And
mm.
that is especially true for kids' speech. If you, the example I gave in my last workshop was if you've ever had a kid try to ask Alexa to play a song who's a young child, you've seen where ASR doesn't work. I have a child with a speech delay, and it's very frustrating for him to try and use some of these things. And that also can be incredibly demotivating for kids. So that's culturally relevant, but beyond that. We don't want kids to start feeling like they are failing or not getting it. When they know the content, they are just not being asked it in the right way.
Right, right. No, that's super interesting. We have a great question. Let's see here. Wondering if these apps have been scientifically evaluated by third parties for efficacy.
That's a great question. And with Duolingo ABC, we see that study by the Education Development Center that found a lot of progress. Being able, having evidence-based solutions is something that we also talk about at the Learning Agency a lot. Education research in general can be pretty tough. You get a lot. I like that you mentioned by third-party researchers because a lot of the times you get tools releasing their own research, but no ed tech platform that's trying to get customers is going to say, like, we studied our platform and it gave mediocre results, right? They're always going to say that it was really impactful. And so sometimes that third party research can be challenging. And other programs that we do at the Learning Agency, we help teams do trialing and RCTs and things like that to really get that evidence base. But I totally hear the concern of, I think frequently tools and ed tech has just moved so quickly with AI and in the post-COVID world that frequently tools are deployed before the efficacy research is there to back it up. And so
Yeah.
you kind of are like hoping for the best in some ways, and then you start to just see what you're doing in your own life or what smaller groups are doing. Efficacy research is also expensive to do, but it's something that would be great if it was around more and really had a good user base, not user base, good solid research base for more of these platforms.
Okay. That's great. Um, Susan, do you want to come off mute? I don't know that I'm understanding your question entirely. Popular, if that's like user base or it
You
might be easy.
say, is it a lot of people using Duolingo ABC? Is it popular?
I think Duolingo in general is a pretty popular app.
That I know, but
Uh,
ABC, for the children.
I couldn't really give you user data on it. I
Okay.
had heard of it before this workshop, and I had heard other families talk about it in my network. And the child to draw on it, to pretend I'm have the app on my phone, they're holding it and just putting their finger to the screen. And then
Oh, I
the
see.
app prompts them. So it says start at the dot. And so they put their finger on the dot and then drag it down. So
I
that way they are, even though they're not holding a pencil, they're kind
Mhm.
of following that same pattern that they would need to execute when they would be holding a pencil to trace it. Because they don't want them to like start writing in the middle of the letter or something like that, that they then wouldn't be able to replicate when using an actual pen or pencil in the classroom.
Okay, thank you.
Um, Great.
Thank you. Steve, you have a few here. Do you want to maybe pick your favorite, or we'll start with one here?
You can pick your favorite. That would be fine with me. I had more, but it wouldn't let me post them in the chat.
Oh, gotcha.
Yes,
Um,
Steve, these are really great questions. I especially appreciate your first one about low income and rural households. I'm from the Appalachian Mountains, which was hit very hard during Hurricane Helene, for example, and students don't have computers and don't have internet at home. You saw this during COVID of students whose families had good access to internet, good access to these supplemental activities, did not have the same learning declines as other students who were just kind of out there for months at a time with very little resources and support. This is something that as technology becomes more and more central to our lives, and AI literacy skills and things like that are more and more important, that this stands. AI could be something that provides the goal. The perfect world would be that AI is able to be equitably deployed so that all students have access to it. We know that's not going to happen. So the fear is that it would end up making that divide even more stark. And I know these are conversations that people and researchers are having. There's more tools that are being created that do not need to be connected to the internet to be used. We're also seeing more tools use things like WhatsApp to give students input and advice to help them be deployed to more communities. This is with math, not literacy, but one organization we work with has a math chatbot that's all in WhatsApp, that's in low and middle income countries and Africa,
I'd
for
love to have
example.
a, sorry,
No, go ahead.
I'd love to have a chat with you and maybe your research team, because what we do is we build solutions using local models on solid state flash drives, so the AI can be carried around with them and it doesn't cost anything. And the student could use it at home or the
Mhm.
library or their friend's house. And I won't go on, but you would be amazed at what can today be technically accomplished using current technology.
Yeah, that's amazing. And from this presentation, also to mention, both BookBot and Duolingo can be used offline. So once you get it and have it, you do not need to keep your connectivity to the internet for your child to keep using the platform. Um, and then AI access, considering the needs of diverse learners and really having good universal design, because we know that when we prioritize the needs of our most diverse learners, we end up prioritizing the needs of all learners with accessibility. And so these are all things that I know are big conversations within the field, and that I hope to continue see getting prioritized in the future.
Thank
sorry, I
you
had
very
myself
much.
muted. I have a fire truck going by outside. Um, Great questions and great answers. Really appreciate all of these. Let's see if we can squeeze in maybe one or two more here. Maybe one more, and then we can. Anybody else in our audience? I guess a fast question I have. Well, somebody else might have a better
Mhm.
question. Is our library starting? I know we have a librarian on the call with us. Are they starting to invest in these? If it's $100, $200 a month, that might be an access point for people who can't afford it out of pocket.
Yeah, access and the financial side of it is huge, especially some of these, when I realized that one of the available apps was $199 a month. Like, that's just a huge sum of money. For a parent to be putting forth. There are some good free tools. Google Read Aloud is free. Duolingo ABC is free. So I think some of these lower cost options are ones that are becoming more and more available to students, teachers, and community centers as well. AI tools and apps to support reading, critical thinking, and creative writing for teens. That's a great question. Within the tools competition, we are seeing a bigger focus on those like durable 21st century skills. So the tools competition is the world's largest ed tech competition, covers developers from very early stage Catalyst Awards all the way to established platforms. So making sure that those critical thinking skills are still being prioritized is something that we are seeing a focus on. I couldn't name a platform off the top of my head that does that, but I know that there are a lot of people who there's organizations, the XQ Institute is one that could be good to look into. They're all about redesigning high schools, having these core competencies like critical thinking, empathy, and collaboration.
That is great. All right, let's see. That is probably a great place to stop here, just so we don't bleed over into people's 5 o'clock time, Eastern at least. So wonderful. This was informative and just full of knowledge. So really appreciate all of it. So thank you, Lizzie. Thank you to all of you who attended and participated today. Please join us for our next workshop in this series next week, May 6th, from 4 to 5. Teaching with AI, real stories from the classroom. We've got Matt Jones, who's a special ed teacher from New York's Suffern Central School District, and Jessica Medeiros, an English teacher from Tennessee's Clarksville Montgomery County School System. And you can register at the same great place, innovateus.org/literacy. Again, Rethinking Reading, AI for Literacy Achievement is an innovative US series sponsored by the Burns Center and in partnership with our great partners here at the Learning Agency. So we're really excited to have had you here today. Lizzie, thank you so much and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye now.